The glitch in the system. The cursor blinked, a patient, mocking metronome against the stark white of the endless code. Alex's apartment was a tomb of blue light. The city, a distant, indifferent smear beyond the panoramic window. 3 a.m., the witching hour for programmers, or perhaps just the hour when sanity frayed at the edges. Alex, a cartographer of digital landscapes, was deep in the final, intricate pathways of the Athelred projects, a ludicrously complex security system for a client whose paranoia was matched only by their budget. If you like this horror stories, please subscribe to Somnus Sapientia. Let's continue with a yawn threatened to crack Alex's jaw. Fingers, usually so precise, hovered over the keyboard. Just this last module. Recompile. Send. Sleep. Then, a thought, unbidden and cold as a draft from an unseen crack. What if you just deleted the master branch right now? One keystroke. All that work, gone. Alex physically recoiled, chair scraping harshly against the polished concrete floor. The sound was an obscenity in the quiet hum of the server rack in the corner. Heart hammering. Where had that come from? It wasn't a temptation, not a fleeting, mischievous urge born of exhaustion. It felt injected, foreign, with a shudder. Alex shook their head, rubbing tired eyes. Stress, they muttered. The word a flimsy shield, classic burnout talking. Still, a tremor ran through their hand as they reached for the mouse, navigating away from the critical lines of code, saving, then saving again. The thought, however, lingered like a bitter aftertaste. It had been so clear, so toneless, like a command line prompt from a rogue AI. A few minutes later, after triple-checking the saved module, Alex leaned back, the tension in their shoulders screaming. The error log popped up. Minor. A misplaced semicolon. Something a junior coder might do. Something Alex hadn't done since, well, since forever. It was in the exact block of code they'd been staring at when the thought had struck. Coincidence? It had to be. The next morning, the city was a cacophony of horns and distant sirens, a stark contrast to the sterile quiet Alex usually cultivated. The Athelred project had been submitted, but the strange mental hiccup from the night before clung like a cobweb. Standing by the sleek, stainless steel coffee machine, Alex waited for the hiss and gurgle that signaled the start of the day. The thought, when it came this time, was quieter, more insidious. As Alex reached for a favorite ceramic mug, a bright yellow one, a cheerful anomaly in the otherwise monochrome apartment, the whisper slid in. It would shatter so beautifully if you just let it drop. Alex's fingers spasmed. The mug wobbled precariously. For a horrifying instant, the image flared in their mind, the yellow ceramic exploding against the gray floor tiles, coffee splashing like arterial blood. With a gasp, Alex snatched the mug back, knuckles white. It wasn't a desire to break it. It was an observation, a detached, curious suggestion from a part of their brain they didn't recognize. "Okay, that's enough," Alex said aloud, voice a little too sharp. Too much caffeine, not enough sleep. But the coffee, when it finally brewed, tasted like ash. Later that day, a video call with Sarah, a former colleague now heading her own startup, was scheduled. Sarah was sharp. No nonsense. The kind of person who could spot a lie from a mile away. Alex usually enjoyed their brainstorming sessions, but today a strange new anxiety prickled. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Alex," Sarah said, her image pixelating slightly on the screen. "Allard finally break you?" Alex forced a laugh. "Something like that. Just tired. You know how it is. Last-minute crunch. Tell me about it. We're trying to debug this new algorithm, and it's like a poltergeist in the machine. Works perfectly, then suddenly decides to invert every third dataset for laughs." Alex nodded, but the word poltergeist snagged uncomfortably. "Yeah, code can be temperamental." As Sarah delved into her technical woes, Alex tried to focus, to offer the insightful solutions they were known for. But then a new thought, cool and appraising, whispered through Alex's mind as they looked at Sarah's earnest, focused face on the screen. "She thinks you're losing your edge. She's just being polite." The suggestion was so jarring, so contrary to their years of professional respect, that Alex missed a beat in the conversation. "Sorry, Sarah. What was that last part?" The connection glitched a bit. Sarah frowned slightly, but repeated her point. Alex offered a passable analysis, but the ease was gone. The internal commentary wasn't just abstract anymore. It was targeting relationships, sowing tiny seeds of doubt. The call ended. Alex stared at the blank screen, the reflection showing a pale, drawn face. This wasn't just stress. Stress was a fog, a pressure. This was a voice, a distinct, articulate, and unwelcome presence in the usually ordered corridors of their mind. That evening, Alex deliberately chose an old, familiar comfort movie, something that required zero mental bandwidth. Curled on the sofa, a blanket pulled tight, they tried to let the predictable plot wash over them, but the apartment felt different. The usual city hum from beyond the window seemed to carry a new, sibilant quality. The shadows in the corners of the room, normally just absences of light, now felt like they were watching, waiting. As the movie's hero delivered a cheesy, triumphant line, the thought slithered in, sharp and clear, laced with something that felt like contempt. "Pathetic. He has no idea what real fear is. But you will." Alex shot upright, heart pounding, the blanket pooling at their feet. The voice was stronger this time, more confident. It wasn't just a random misfire of neurons. It felt intentional. It felt like someone else was sharing their headspace. The remote clattered from nerveless fingers. Alex looked around the silent apartment, at the gleaming surfaces, reflecting a distorted, panicked version of themselves. The city lights outside seemed to pulse with a malevolent intelligence. "Who are you?" Alex whispered to the empty room, the question swallowed by a sudden, overwhelming silence that was more terrifying than any noise. The only answer was the echo of that last, chilling pronouncement in the once private sanctum of their own mind. Persistent echoes. Sleep. When it finally came, after that terrifying pronouncement, was a shallow, restless sea. Alex woke before the alarm, the ghost of unseen scrutiny, clinging to them like the stale air in the apartment. The first conscious thought wasn't their own. It was an echo of the night before. "You will." The statement hung in their mind, a promise and a threat. Breakfast was a mechanical affair. The bright yellow mug from yesterday remained on the counter, unwashed. Alex opted for water, straight from the tap. As they scrolled through news headlines on their tablet, wars, disasters, political scandals, each one seemed to be punctuated by a faint internal sneer. Fools. They worry about such trivial things. The thoughts were no longer fleeting, startling, aberrations. They were becoming a low, persistent hum beneath the surface of Alex's consciousness, like a poorly tuned radio frequency. Sometimes they were almost dismissible, background noise. Other times, they'd sharpen with venomous clarity. While attempting to outline a new, less demanding coding project, something to get their mind back on track, a particularly cruel one surfaced. Alex sketched out a basic framework, the familiar logic, a small comfort. Then, that's laughably simplistic. Even Sarah would see through that facade of competence. Alex's hand tightened on the stylus, snapping the delicate tip. A fresh wave of frustration, mixed with a cold dread, washed over them. The voice was learning, adapting, hitting closer to home. It knew their insecurities, their professional pride. The day became a series of small internal battles. Walking to the local grocery store, a task usually accomplished on autopilot, turned into a minefield. That mother, pushing the stroller, isn't watching. Step out. Just a little. Alex froze mid-stride, yanking themselves back from the curb as a cyclist whizzed past, cursing. The mother, oblivious, continued on her way. Had Alex actually been about to step out, or was it just the power of suggestion? The ambiguity was maddening. The apartment, once a haven of minimalist order, was starting to show cracks. Unread mail piled up on the console table. A half-finished glass of water from the night before sat beside the sink. Alex noticed these small lapses with a detached sense of alarm. Control was paramount to them, and it was visibly, tangibly slipping. The city outside, usually a vibrant backdrop, now felt oppressive. The rumble of the distant metro line seemed to vibrate up through the floorboards, a restless energy that mirrored their own internal agitation. Sirens, once just part of the urban soundscape, now sounded like they were screaming directly at Alex. Later that afternoon, Chloe called. Chloe, with her infectious laugh and unwavering optimism, was Alex's oldest friend, their anchor to a world that felt increasingly unreal. "Hey, stranger." Chloe's voice chirped through the phone. "I was thinking of swinging by that new artisanal donut place. You know, the one that charges a fortune, but makes life worth living. My treat." Alex hesitated. The thought of navigating a social interaction, of pretending everything was normal, felt monumental. She'll see it on your face. She'll know you're coming apart. "Oh, hey, Chloe," Alex managed, trying to inject some warmth into their voice. "Sounds great, but I'm kind of swamped today. Still recovering from Athelred." A pause. "Swamped? Alex, you finished Athelred 2 days ago, and you sound like you've been wrestling bears. Everything okay?" The genuine concern in Chloe's voice was a physical ache. Alex wanted to confide, to spill the impossible truth. But how? "Hey, Chloe, I think my brain's been hijacked by a malevolent entity with a penchant for psychological torture. Just tired," Alex mumbled. "Really tired. Didn't sleep well." Another intrusive thought, sharp and quick. "Tell her you think she sets gained weight. See how she reacts." Alex flinched, horrified. "I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm just not good company right now. Maybe another time." The silence on the other end of the line stretched. "Okay," Chloe said finally, her voice flatter. "Sure, Alex. Take care of yourself, okay? Call me if you need anything. Anything at all." The click of the call ending was deafening. Alex sank onto the sofa, head in their hands. They had pushed Chloe away, one of the few people they truly trusted. The voice in their head offered no comfort, only a dry, internal chuckle. See, you're better off alone. No one understands. The apartment felt colder now. The shadows deeper. Sleep deprivation was definitely a factor. Alex knew the rational explanations. Stress, anxiety, perhaps even the early onset of a more serious mental health issue. That night, instead of attempting another distracting movie, they opened their laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard, not to code, but to search. Symptoms of severe stress, auditory hallucinations, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, personality changes due to overwork. Dozens of articles, forums, and medical sites appeared. Alex devoured them, looking for a diagnosis, a label, something that could explain the alien presence in their mind. There were descriptions of anxiety disorders, of OCD, of psychotic breaks. Some symptoms overlapped. The intrusive thoughts, the growing paranoia, the social withdrawal. But nothing quite captured the distinct feeling of otherness, the sense that these thoughts weren't a distorted version of their own psyche, but an invasion. The articles spoke of thoughts originating from the self, however unwelcome. These felt implanted. One forum post, buried deep in a thread about unusual experiences, caught Alex's eye. A user described thoughts that weren't mine. A voice that commented on everything I did. The replies were mostly dismissive, suggesting therapy or medication. But for Alex, it was a tiny, terrifying flicker of recognition. As they read, a new thought, laced with icy amusement, unfurled in their mind. Looking for answers in there? How quaint. They can't help you. No one can. Alex slammed the laptop shut, a choked cry escaping their lips. The rational explanations were failing them. The research offered no solace, only more questions and a deeper, more profound fear. This wasn't just stress. This wasn't just their own mind playing tricks. The echoes were getting louder, more persistent, and they were starting to sound like they belonged to something else entirely. The dawning realization was a cold dread seeping into their bones. They were losing this internal battle. Please subscribe, leave a like, and a comment. The unwanted tenant. The days that followed blurred into a gray miasma of sleeplessness and mounting dread, the entity in Alex's head. For that's how Alex had begun to think of it. No longer a mere collection of thoughts, but a distinct, unwelcome presence was settling in, making itself comfortable in the ruins of their peace. It had developed a personality, a chillingly distinct one. It was arch, superior, and possessed a cruel, mocking wit. It was, Alex realized with a jolt that sent ice through their veins, an eloquent sadist. It began to offer advice. While Alex was trying to focus on a simple financial spreadsheet, a task that once would have taken minutes, the voice, it deserved a capital letter now, murmured, "You know that little cafe on Elm Street? The one with the surprisingly good pastries? They're looking for investors. You should put a significant portion of your savings into it. Trust me, it's a sure thing." Alex's fingers froze over the keyboard. The cafe on Elm Street had closed down 3 months ago due to a health code violation. The voice knew that. Surely, it was a test, a taunt, a way to highlight Alex's deteriorating grip on everyday reality, or perhaps a way to push them towards reckless action. "No," Alex whispered, eyes darting around the room, as if the voice had a physical form they could confront. "No? Are you sure? Think of the returns. Or are you too cowardly?" The condescension was palpable. In a desperate attempt to reclaim some mental territory, Alex turned to the standard arsenal of self-help meditation apps, mindfulness exercises, even grueling online HIIT workouts designed to exhaust the body and quiet the mind. During a guided meditation, as the soothing voice from the app instructed Alex to observe your thoughts without judgment, the voice cackled, "Observe this, then, you witless puppet." A torrent of violent, disturbing images flooded Alex's mind. Flashes of accidents, of cruelty, of self-harm, so vivid and grotesque that Alex gasped, ripping off the headphones, heart pounding. The app's gentle chime, signaling the end of the session, sounded like a funeral bell. Exercise offered no escape either. Mid-burpee, lungs burning. The voice would comment, "Pathetic, you sir, flailing like a landed fish. Do you really think this physical exertion will exercise me? I live where your sweat can reach." The apartment itself was becoming a hostile environment. Mirrors were the worst. Alex's reflection seemed alien. The eyes wide and haunted, the face gaunt. Sometimes, for a horrifying split second, they thought they saw a sneer on their own lips that wasn't theirs. They began avoiding reflective surfaces, turning mirrors to the wall, showering in near darkness. The silence in the apartment, once a comfort, now felt pregnant, charged with unspoken malice. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the old building settling, seemed like a prelude to something monstrous. The inevitable major blunder occurred during a remote consultation for a potential new client. It was a significant opportunity, a chance to claw back some professional normalcy. Alex had meticulously prepared, but the voice was particularly active that morning, a relentless barrage of mockery and insidious suggestions. As the potential client, a stern-faced woman named Miss Albright, detailed her company's SEP's intricate security needs, the voice chimed in with, "She has terrible taste in art. That painting behind her looks like a deranged toddler did it. You should tell her. Honesty is appreciated, isn't it?" Alex gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles white, trying to filter out the internal monologue. But then Miss Albright asked a direct, complex technical question. Alex opened their mouth to answer, to provide the well-rehearsed, intelligent response they had prepared. Instead, what came out, prompted by a sudden, irresistible compulsion that felt like a physical shockwave through their brain, "That abstract piece behind you. It's remarkably distracting." The words hung in the air, horrifyingly out of place. Miss Albright's eyebrows shot up. A glacial silence descended. "Oh, bravo." The voice purred with delight. "Pure, unadulterated social suicide. I'm almost proud." Alex stammered an apology, a garbled mess of excuses about lack of sleep and misspeaking. But the damage was done. The polite but firm email declining their services arrived less than an hour later. The Athelred account, their last major success, felt like a distant memory from another life. That was the breaking point. The shame and despair were a physical weight. Alex scrolled through their contacts, fingers trembling, and landed on Chloe's name. They had to tell someone. They couldn't bear this alone anymore. Chloe agreed to meet at a quiet park, a neutral space. Alex arrived, looking disheveled, dark circles stark against their pale skin. "Alex, you look awful," Chloe said, her usual cheerfulness evaporating into genuine concern. "What's going on? And I mean really going on?" Alex took a deep breath. "Chloe, something's wrong with me." really wrong. They tried to explain, stumbling over words, attempting to describe the thoughts, the voice, the feeling of being an unwilling passenger in their own mind. It's like there's someone else in my head, someone who hates me. Chloe listened patiently, her expression a mixture of worry and confusion, intrusive thoughts. Alex, that can happen with severe stress and anxiety. Burnout is real. Maybe you should see a doctor, a therapist. No, it's not just thoughts. Alex insisted, desperation creeping into their voice. It's more. It talks to me. It knows things. It made me say that awful thing to Miss Albright. Chloe Sett's brow furrowed. It made you... Alex, that sounds... She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. That sounds like you're under an incredible amount of pressure. Sometimes our minds can play tricks on us when we're exhausted. You think I'm imagining it? Alex's voice was barely a whisper. The hope that had flickered within them began to dim. Of course, she thinks you see her imagining it. The voice interjected, smooth and smug. To her, you see her, just another fragile mind, cracking under pressure. How disappointingly mundane. Chloe, please. Alex begged, tears welling. You have to believe me. It's Sett's real. Chloe reached out, placing a hesitant hand on Alex Sepp's arm. I believe that you step her suffering, Alex. I really do, and I want to help. But maybe the explanation isn't as sinister as it feels right now. Let Seps get you some professional help. Together, Alex pulled their arm away, the sense of isolation crashing down harder than ever. Chloe was trying, in her own way, but she didn't understand. No one could. They were truly alone with this unwanted tenant in their mind. The paranoia, once a subtle hum, now blared. She thinks you're crazy. Everyone will. I have to go, Alex said abruptly, standing up. Unable to meet Chloe's worried gaze, they turned and walked away, leaving Chloe calling after them, the sound of her concern, swallowed by the indifferent city noise and the triumphant, silent laughter in their head. The desperate gamble to confide had failed. Now Alex was more certain than ever. This wasn't something a doctor could easily fix. This was a siege, and the enemy was already within the gates. Their sense of self was eroding, replaced by a terrifying, parasitic consciousness. The fight for their own mind was just beginning, and they had no allies. Please subscribe, leave a like, and a comment. The siege within, the aftermath of the disastrous meeting with Chloe, was a descent into a new, more terrifying phase. The voice was no longer an intermittent tormentor. It was a constant companion, a relentless narrator of Alex's decay. It was the first thing Alex heard upon waking, if the fitful, nightmare-ridden dozing could even be called sleep, and the last thing that echoed as exhaustion finally, briefly, claimed them. Another glorious day in your crumbling psyche, it would croon as Alex dragged himself out of bed, the apartment around them sinking further into disarray. Clothes lay where they were dropped, dishes piled up in the sink, and a fine layer of dust was settling on every surface, a physical manifestation of Alex's neglect. The once pristine sanctuary now mirrored the chaos within. The voice had also developed an unnerving new trick. Prediction. Small, insignificant things, at first. The next car to turn the corner will be red. Alex would glance out the window, heart hammering, and a red car would appear. That old man, walking his dog, is about to drop his newspaper. A moment later, the paper would flutter to the pavement. These weren't grand prophecies, but tiny, accurate pronouncements that chipped away at Alex's remaining rationality. Was the voice clairvoyant, or was Alex's mind so fractured it was creating these coincidences, desperately seeking patterns in the noise? The ambiguity was a fresh hell. "See? I know things," the voice would whisper, smugly. "You should listen to me more often. I say I'm only trying to help you along." Isolation became Alex's only refuge. However flawed, Chloe's worried texts and calls went unanswered. Emails from concerned former colleagues were deleted unread. The outside world, perceived through the filter of the voice and Alex's mounting paranoia, seemed hostile and judgmental. Every casual glance from a stranger on the rare occasions Alex ventured out for groceries felt like an accusation. Every siren seemed to be wailing for them. The physical toll was becoming undeniable. Sleep was a forgotten luxury. Food tasted like cardboard, and Alex ate sporadically, shedding weight until their clothes hung loose, and their reflection, when they accidentally caught it, was a gaunt, hollow-eyed stranger. A persistent tremor had taken up residence in their hands, making even simple tasks like typing or holding a cup a struggle. Their once sharp intellect felt clouded, thoughts skittering away like frightened animals before they could be properly grasped, except, of course, for the crystal-clear pronouncements of the voice. Desperation fueled a new, frantic line of inquiry. If doctors and therapists couldn't understand, if this wasn't a recognized psychological condition, then perhaps the answer lay elsewhere. Alex plunged into the dark corners of the internet, far beyond medical journals, obscure folklore about possessive entities, ancient texts detailing mental parasites, forums dedicated to unexplained phenomena, fringe science theories about consciousness and shared realities. Alex devoured it all. The apartment became littered with printouts, hastily scribbled notes, books on demonology, neuro-linguistic programming, and quantum entanglement, a chaotic tapestry of a mind grasping at straws. "Entertaining, isn't it?" the voice mocked as Alex pored over a blurry scan of a medieval manuscript describing Cetus. All these little theories humans concoct to explain what they can Cetus control. You stir, looking for a label, a weapon. There isn't Cetus one. One particularly bleak evening, after days of relentless mental assault and near total sleeplessness, Alex stood by the large window of their apartment. The city sprawled below, a glittering, indifferent beast. The voice had been particularly vicious, dredging up every past failure, every insecurity, every regretted word, twisting them into weapons of self-loathing. "It would be so easy, wouldn't it?" the voice whispered, its tone almost seductive. Just one step, one moment of release. All this pain, all this confusion, it could just stop. Think of the silence. Alex looked down at the dizzying drop. The streetlights blurred. The usual fear of heights was strangely absent, replaced by a profound, bone-deep weariness. The voice was right. It would be easy, an end to the siege. Their hand went to the window latch. It was stiff, but it would open. The tremor in their hand was worse now, their whole body shaking. "Yes," the voice urged, a note of triumph in its tone. "That sibs it. Let go." Alex's fingers fumbled with the mechanism. The metallic click as the latch gave way sounded unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence of the room, broken only by Alex's ragged breathing and the voice's eager encouragement. A cool draft ghosted across their face. For a moment, there was nothing but the void, the glittering lights, and the promise of an end. Alex leaned forward, ever so slightly. And then, something else. A flicker, not a thought from the voice, but something deeper, something almost entirely buried. A memory. Chloe's face, her genuine concern, Sarah's boisterous laugh. During a past project, the satisfaction of solving a complex problem, a fragment of their own voice, their own will, small and weak, but there. No. The word was a spark in the darkness, almost extinguished before it could catch. Don't be a fool. The voice snarled, sensing the shift. This is your only way out. But the spark held. It was a tiny, defiant ember of self-preservation. My mind. My life. The realization, faint but present, was that surrendering to this voice meant total annihilation of self. If they were going down, they wouldn't go willingly. With a strength Alex didn't know they possessed, they recoiled from the window, stumbling backward, falling to the floor, gasping as if they'd just broken the surface after nearly drowning. The voice raged, a torrent of curses and threats, but for the first time, its power felt slightly less absolute. It was furious, because it had, for a crucial instant, lost control. Lying on the cold floor, shaking uncontrollably, Alex stared up at the ceiling. The terror was still there, a living thing coiling in their gut, but alongside it, something new, a fragile, desperate resolve. They were teetering on the edge of oblivion, their sanity shattered, their trust in their own perceptions gone. But they weren't dead yet. They wouldn't just endure this. They would fight. They had to understand what was happening to them, not just to survive, but to reclaim what was stolen. The siege wasn't over, but Alex had just found a sliver of a weapon, their own will to resist. Please subscribe, leave a like, and a comment. Confronting the echo. The floor was cold beneath Alex's cheek. The voice was still a furious, venomous torrent in their head, but the brief, defiant spark of no had changed something fundamental. It wasn't just Alex against an unbeatable intruder anymore. It was a battle, and Alex had finally desperately chosen to fight. With a newfound, albeit fragile, sense of purpose, Alex pushed himself up. The apartment was a disaster, a physical manifestation of their internal ruin, littered with the detritus of their frantic research. Before, they had searched for a label, a diagnosis. Now they searched for a weapon, a strategy. The voice, sensing this shift, redoubled its efforts. Such a brave little soldier now are we. Do you really think your pathetic human will can match me? I am woven into the fabric of your fear. Ignoring it as best they could, a monumental effort, akin to ignoring a siren blaring directly in one's ear. Alex returned to their scattered notes, obscure folklore, forgotten psychiatric treatises on ego-dystonic intrusions, even quasi-scientific papers on mimetic parasites. One particular piece of research, found on a barely accessible academic server dedicated to parapsychology, began to resonate with horrifying clarity. It spoke of echo forms, psychic constructs, or perhaps even nascent entities that could latch onto minds under extreme duress or isolation. These forms, the paper theorized, fed on negative emotional energy, amplifying the host's anxieties and fears, eventually becoming a dominant, controlling presence. They were not demons in the classical sense, but psychic leeches, formless and insidious. Crucially, the paper mentioned a vulnerability. Echo forms were entirely dependent on the host's belief in their power and their narrative. They thrived in the shadows of the subconscious, twisting existing thoughts. If the host could consciously and definitively reject the echo's narrative, isolate its origin within their own mind as separate, and reclaim their own mental space with absolute conviction, the echo could theoretically be starved or expelled. It required an almost impossible level of mental discipline and self-awareness, especially for a mind already under siege. Fascinating bedtime stories. The voice sneered. Are you going to try and think me away? How utterly charmingly naive. Alex's gaze fell upon a small obsidian paperweight on their desk. It was a gift from a long-forgotten trip, something they'd picked up idly. It had been there through the entire ordeal. A silent observer. Could something so mundane be a focal point? The research suggested echoes, sometimes anchored to an object, or a persistent intrusive memory. For Alex, the voice hadn't started with an object, but with a thought, the one about deleting the Athelred code. That was the seed. The strategy, if it could be called that, was terrifyingly simple and monumentally difficult. Alex had to confront the voice head-on, not by arguing or resisting in fear, but by calmly and systematically dismantling its hold, tracing it back to that first glitch, and asserting their own original thought stream. Alex sat down, not on the sofa, now a place of torment, but on the hard floor in the center of the living room, the most open space in the apartment. They closed their eyes, deliberately steadying their ragged breathing. Oh. Are we meditating again? The voice purred, dripping with sarcasm. Perhaps a little yoga to go with your mental breakdown. You are not me, Alex stated, the words spoken aloud, a tremor in their voice, but underpinned by the cold resolve born of near annihilation. You are an echo, a parasite. Strong words, little host, but I am your darkest thoughts, your truest impulses. I am the part of you that sees the futility of it all. No. Alex focused on the memory of that first intrusive command. What if you just deleted the master branch? That was the first intrusion. Before that, my thoughts were my own. Stressed, yes. Tired, yes. But mine. Alex began to mentally walk back through the events of the past weeks, not as a victim replaying trauma, but as an investigator searching for the point of entry. Each sneering comment from the voice, each manufactured fear, each manipulative suggestion, Alex met with a calm, internal counter. That is the echo. That is not my thought. That is the parasite. It was an excruciating process. The voice fought back, with escalating ferocity. It dredged up Alex's deepest insecurities, replayed their most painful memories, whispered of Chloe's pity, Sarah's disappointment, the world's indifference. It projected vivid images of failure, of loneliness, of madness. You are me, it shrieked. The voice in Alex's head raw, with something that sounded almost like desperation. Without me, you are nothing but a collection of anxieties waiting to collapse. I was someone before you, Alex said, teeth gritted, sweat beading on their forehead. I built things. I had friends. I had a mind that was my own. They clung to the image of themselves, at their most competent, their most content, before the siege began. The battle was entirely internal. Yet Alex felt physically battered. The room seemed to dim and warp around them. The voice was a storm, a hurricane of negativity and malice, but Alex held on to the core truth. This is not me. They focused on the obsidian paperweight in their mind's eye, not as an anchor for the voice, but as an anchor for themselves, a point of solid, mundane reality. They visualized the voice as a dark, oily smoke, clinging to their thoughts, and with every affirmation of their own identity, they imagined that smoke thinning, receding. "You can do this." The voice howled. "I am too strong. I am part of you. You are a lie." Alex gasped, the effort immense. "You are the glitch in the system, and I am debugging you." With a final, monumental act of will, Alex envisioned their own consciousness as a bright, clear light. They focused that light onto the clinging smoke, onto the echo. They didn't try to destroy it with anger, but to illuminate it, to expose it, to separate it from their own being, with the sheer force of their reclaimed self-awareness. There was a silent, internal scream, a feeling of immense pressure, of something tearing away, like adhesions being ripped from living tissue. The voice's stream of invective faltered, became garbled, then faded into a series of desperate, unintelligible whispers, and then silence. A profound, absolute silence. Alex sat there, trembling, gasping for breath, for what felt like an eternity. The apartment was still. The oppressive atmosphere that had choked them for weeks seemed to have lifted, replaced by a fragile, tentative quiet. Cautiously, Alex opened their eyes. The room was the same, still messy, still bearing the scars of their ordeal, but the air felt clean. They waited, listened. Nothing. Only the distant, normal sounds of the city, only their own thoughts. Tentative, tired, but unmistakably theirs. A sob escaped Alex's lips, a sound of grief, of exhaustion, but also of profound, earth-shattering relief. They had faced the tenant in their mind, and somehow evicted it. The road ahead would be long. There was therapy to consider, relationships to mend, a life to rebuild from the wreckage. The experience would leave indelible scars. The fear that the echo, or something like it, could return, would likely linger, a shadow in the quiet moments. But as Alex slowly got to their feet, the first rays of dawn were beginning to filter through the grimy window. They were battered, irrevocably changed, but they were, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, alone in their own head. The siege was over. They had reclaimed themselves. This was my own thoughts are turning against me. Please subscribe. Leave a like and a comment.